look what's come back in. So as you can see, got the car back. Let's have a little look at the engine bay, shall we? Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of EXCL Garage. And yes, the GT86 is back. It's back from its paint shop, as you can see. Has its engine bay painted entirely in a nice neutral Nardo grey colour. It's just looking fresh as anything. So I can't wait to dive into this and really start putting the car back together now. We're at the kind of peak of the project now. From here, it's kind of downhill in a good way. We're gonna start getting old parts back in the engine bay, new parts back in the engine bay, and engine back in the engine bay. It's all going in there. So I think really, rather than sit here in front of the camera and just waffle on for ages, why don't I show you guys around the new engine bay and talk you through what the next steps are really from here, so you can get a good feel of what's to come. Let's dive into it, shall we? Right, so here we are. As you can see, it's looking absolutely fantastic. It's looking fresh as anything. It's looking glossy. It's looking wet. It's looking amazing. The guys did a fantastic job getting it all into its condition after I gave them what was essentially, messy, still had wiring in it, still had the suspension in it, air lines, everything still kind of in the engine bay, but they really knocked it out of the park. You would have seen the time lapse of them spraying it at the end of the last episode. And as you can see, it's just looking fantastic. Really pleased with how it turned out. All of this, lovely and smooth. Can't wait to make a right mess of it when I start swinging the engine and gearbox in. But no, in all honesty, there's quite a few things to do before then. I'm going to be protecting the whole thing, probably giving it ceramic coat, because why not? It's easy to get to all of it. And it's been a few weeks now since this is painted, so I'm going to risk it, and hopefully it should be all right. After that, there's a few other jobs to do here. I want to do some kind of sand and heat deadening in the tunnel. I'll probably try and recreate this piece. As you can see, it got quite tore up, but I'm going to try and recreate that out of some good high quality heat insulation material. Got to get all the brake system back in. That's quite crucial, obviously. Got to start unbundling all this wiring, getting all this routed back to where it belongs. At some point, some of it might get cut out when I get my new wiring harness for the engine and I can work out what is and isn't needed. But for now, we're just going to put it all back in as it was. Got to get the windscreen wiper cowl, which is down there. Got to get that back in, and as you can see, they painted down in here, and that's because you can see in there for these nice holes. So I wanted that to be at least grey or a dark colour. I didn't want it to be red just shining through when the rest of the engine bay is no longer red. What else is there? There's various like under tray bits, and got some heat tape as well I might place in certain areas, just to try and, I want to try and bring this car back as much as possible to being a nice like road car. So yeah, any excessive heat around the footwell isn't going to be too fun. What else is there? There's also, these bits also got painted. The radiator top support there. And that might get manipulated and changed up as I try to fit an intake. But for now, got it painted, looks great. Also got the kind of wing mounts here and a little battery / brake line bracket, got all that. So everything in this engine bay is going to be lovely Nardo grey. Perhaps not the most exciting colour in the world. Obviously, some more fancier colours would have been more expensive for starters, but also would have tied me into a colour with the body if I ever get the wrap removed and resprayed to something else. As you can see, the grey works quite well with the wrap colour as it is, and it'll work quite well with any other colour. And when this goes in, it will stand out quite nicely in there. So that's it, got loads to do. I think what I'm going to start doing off camera is I'll give it a ceramic coat and give that time to dry and set. I'll come back tomorrow with a friend and we'll start unbundling all this wiring, start getting the brake system back in. Jeez, there's a lot. So let's get cracking. I'll stick you guys on a time lapse and let's dive into it.
Wrong. to my own song, but you came, you made me see the weight I put on me was too much, too tough to heal. I needed time, I needed to be still. You came, you made me see the weight I put on me was too much, too tough to heal. I needed time, I needed to be still. Deep inside I feel so gone, broken, I held to every wrong. I'm letting your light shine, I'm letting your love work through me. In every moment, breathe in this moment. You came, you made me see the weight I put on me was too much, too tough to heal. I needed time, I needed to be still. You came, you made me see the weight I put on me was too much, too tough to heal. I needed time, I needed to be still.
Right, so here we are, guys. So as you just saw in the time lapse, me and a friend here, we're getting on pretty busy with this. So got the majority of the brake system in, all the way up around here. Had a couple of dramas of that because one of the fittings that went into the braided lines down there was a little bit gummed up. I had to run a dye on it, so it's all sorted now. But got, of course, all the fuse box, all the wiring around there, all down here. And even though it's now a lot busier, I think it looks, well, it looks more like an engine bay. So that's exciting. Tidied up the subframe. Had a little scabby rust spots on it, so tidied that up. Still got all this wiring to go in there. So this is all just lots of auxiliary stuff. Aftermarket headlights, little bumper LEDs that go there, and a few other things. So gonna start cracking on that in a minute, but I won't bore you with a time lapse or anything. Right, so one of the next steps I want to tackle is creating some kind of sound and heat deadening in the transmission tunnel. Obviously I could just stand the gearbox in there and be done with it, but I mean, even the old gearbox got really quite hot, and it used this thing, as you can see, seen better days, because when we pulled the gearbox out, we forgot to take the gear stick off and it tore all this out. So whatever, I was always planning to get rid of it anyway. I was going to use some kind of self-adhesive material, but talking to a couple of companies that sell the stuff, they say that, of course, self-adhesive like tape is only really good for reflecting heat. You know, if it comes into contact with something, it's not going to do anything. Whereas this material like this, which is quite thick, and essentially what it is it's 2 layers of tinny aluminium stuff, and sandwiched between it is like a layer of like glass fiber, much like this thing had with that stuff, which is flaking out all over the place. So the plan is to try and shape this to look like this, which could be quite tricky, to say the least. I guess I'd start off by doing these 2 bends here. Probably gonna have to flare it out as well. I think I'm just gonna grab some bits of wood and start hammering at it, really. See what happens. Take some measurements first, so we're not just hammering randomly. All right, so I've got some measurements here. I think now I can start planning where the middle is and where the first bends need to be and so on. All right, again, more markings. I suppose this is it. Grab a chunk of wood and see if I can start bending it. Right, so this is what goes so far. Really doesn't look like much. Actually looks like I've ruined it, to be fair, with this funny contour going on here. As you can see, if I line up the original thing and the new one's a little bit longer, which is fine. I'd rather it come more into the engine bay. You've got this hump which comes out, goes down, and then comes out. And I've somewhat recreated that. Of course, it comes out, goes down, and then comes out. Got the flared bits at the front here, very, very rough. I've drilled a hole in it, essentially been going back and forth to the car, which I've now taped up in hopes of not ruining some of the paint here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use this original stud here, which holds the original one. You probably can't see that due to the light. There it is. Then what I'm probably gonna do is start just going around and hammering it to contour to this tunnel with a layer of foam in between so I don't absolutely smash the new paint. So that's the process. I think, like I said, it's really difficult to film. I think what I'll do is I'll just show you guys the finished result. So let's jump to that in a minute. Right, so you wouldn't have seen what was actually kind of going on there, but the heat shield is now done. As you can see, it's looking pretty good for what it started out as. You know, big just sheet, double layers, aluminium sheet essentially. Obviously I made some cuts in it so I could spread it out. It's still obviously not the prettiest thing in the world, but in honesty it's not the easiest stuff to work with. Obviously, as you can see, I've got some old heat shielding here, which is just obviously a single sheet. It doesn't have the glass fiber in the middle or the second sheet, and that would be a lot easier to work with, but this stuff is gonna be the bee's knees of heat shielding. This is as it runs down the tunnel. You've got the, you'll have the engine and gearbox here running down, and then the gear stick would be just past the end. Of course, this will keep all the cabin nice and shielded from heat, any sound and so on. Put some holes through it and it'll mount into some existing studs like this one here, as well as some existing holes like these ones here. And then down here, I've installed some riv nuts, and there's one there. So I want to get this in the car now. I think that's basically done. Obviously, where I cut it, I sealed it up with some gold tape I had laying around. Otherwise, the filling, the glass fiber filling, just kind of pours out. Put some paint in the bolt holes to seal it in there as well. So this is done now. I'm going to chuck this in the car and let's have a quick look at it. Well, here we go. Just installed it. Just changed the lighting a bit so you can see it a bit better. As you can see, it sits in there very nicely. It's all hugged up as tight as possible so that the gearbox and of course exhaust, fuel line, things like that can get past it. Obviously, that also helps. The bigger the air gap between the components, then the more heat insulation is going to offer. So we just come down here, you can see, looks brilliant. All nice and solid in there. As you can see, it doesn't rattle at all. That's always a bane of heat shields like this. Anyone that's had a car that has a rattly heat shield will know that it's just the worst. And you might have a couple of questions. One might be, how did you get around that? And two might be, well, all looks lovely, silver, gold, but how do you make it more fancy? Well, my fashion conscious viewer, how do you make anything in the car world look more fancy? You add carbon fiber. So, had some sheets of carbon fiber laying around. It's proper carbon fiber. Cut out, it's 2mm thick. Cut out some 50mm discs. Some nice lovely big washers. Spreads a load around that bolt and of course holds it in nice and firm. It's not going anywhere. A couple down there. So there we have it. That should do quite nicely to block some heat, a little bit of sound. when this great big thing goes in there. And the exhaust headers will run probably down there. So I might do a bit to shroud the heat coming off those as well. But in all honesty, I'm going to get them probably coated. So really, they'll be doing their own job of insulating from heat anyway. So there we have it. Here's the engine bay, all ready to start accepting the engine and gearbox. And I think that's what we're going to start getting onto next episode. Installing the clutch and flywheel, going to install the gearbox mount, might run the fuel line, and then really, it's going to be swinging that into that hole. So that's it. I think that's where we're going to end today's episode. Hope you enjoy the journey of getting this thing back. Start getting the engine bay all filled out, and then fabricating, if you can call it that, fabricating a custom heat shield. Must admit, I've never done anything like that before, make any kind of heat shielding, especially not with that material. That is a first for me, and I'm actually quite pleased with how it came out. What do you think of it? Let me know in the comments down below. Perhaps you think it looks like a dog's dinner, which I think is a bit harsh, but let me know regardless. I'd like to know. And as always, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give the video a like, and please consider subscribing to the channel so you can stay tuned for more to come. And like I say, the next episode, which is going to be very exciting, getting the engine and gearbox kind of dressed up and offered up to the engine bay here. Anyway, that's enough chatter for now. Catch you guys in the next one. Cheers. Bye for now.